Proverbs 3 and the courage to trust an unclear path. Proverbs 3 is often quoted by people who want the fog to lift. But the chapter does not begin by handing you a clearer map. It begins by asking a quieter, harder question. What are you leaning on while the map stays folded? That is the part we often miss. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding is not a gentle decoration for uncertain seasons. It is a weight-bearing command. It assumes your soul is resting its pressure somewhere. On your plan, on your analysis, on another person's reaction, on the feeling that if you can just understand enough, you will finally be safe. And then life places you in a moment where understanding cannot hold all the weight. The email is still unanswered. The decision is still sitting on the table. The notebook has lines crossed out so hard the paper is dented. You have prayed, but you still cannot see every consequence. You have asked for wisdom, but heaven has not unfolded the whole road. So the deeper question is not only, which way should I go? The deeper question is, what if courage begins when you stop asking your own understanding to carry what only God was meant to hold? Number 1. The thing you lean on reveals what you trust. A chair can look strong until you put your full weight on it. From across the room, it seems fine. The legs stand straight, the wood looks polished. Nothing about it warns you. But the moment you lean back too far, the small weakness announces itself. A shift, a crack, a sudden awareness that what looks stable was never built for that much trust. Proverbs 3, 5 uses that kind of image. Do not lean on your own understanding. It does not say you have no understanding. It does not ask you to become careless, irrational, or suspicious of thought itself. Proverbs is full of counsel, planning, correction, observation, prudence, and careful speech. Wisdom is not anti-thinking, but thinking is not the same as trusting. Your understanding is a gift. It can compare options. It can remember patterns. It can notice danger. It can ask good questions. It can learn from scripture, counsel, and experience. But it was never designed to be the final structure holding your whole soul upright. That is where the strain begins. You sit at the table with a decision in front of you, and at first you are simply trying to be wise. You write down the options. You think through the timing. You imagine how one person may respond, then another, then another. You count the cost. That is not wrong. Wisdom should count the cost. But slowly something changes. The page becomes less like a tool and more like a shelter. You keep rewriting the same plan because you are not really searching anymore. You are trying to make fear feel safe. I know that place. I have called it discernment when it was really the ache of wanting to be untouchable. I wanted enough information to protect me from regret, enough confirmation to protect me from criticism, enough clarity to protect me from needing to trust God after I moved. That kind of clarity looks holy from a distance, but up close it can become a substitute for surrender. Proverbs 3 does not shame the person who wants to understand. A good father does not mock a child for asking where the road goes, but a wise father also knows that the child may begin to worship the explanation more than the one leading them. The father's hand is no longer enough. The child wants the whole route, the weather report, the list of dangers, the names of everyone they will meet, and proof that no step will feel embarrassing. That is not wisdom anymore. That is fear trying to secure the future before obedience is required. The verse presses gently but firmly on that fear. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, not with the part of your heart that already feels calm, not with the part that has understood the lesson, all your heart. The anxious part that keeps calculating, the proud part that hates not knowing, the tired part that wants the decision to be easy, the wounded part that does not want to be disappointed again. Bring the whole heart to God, then stop leaning your full weight on what cannot carry you. That does not mean you throw away reason. It means reason takes its rightful place. It becomes a lamp in your hand, not a throne over your life. It becomes a servant of faith, not a replacement for God. And once that weight begins to shift, Proverbs 3 moves deeper, because trust is not only tested at the moment of decision, it is formed long before the crossroads, in the hidden place where God teaches the heart what to remember. Number 2. Wisdom must be written before the road turns. Proverbs 3 begins before the famous verse, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments." Then comes the image. Bind steadfast love and faithfulness around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. That matters because an unclear path does not only test your direction, it tests what has already been written inside you. A decision under pressure rarely creates a heart from nothing. It reveals the heart's handwriting. What you have practiced in quiet begins to speak when the road bends. What you have repeated, excused, feared, loved, and obeyed starts rising to the surface when you no longer have a clean answer. This is why Proverbs does not treat trust as a last-minute technique. It is not a sentence you paste over panic when every other support has failed. Trust is cultivated. Wisdom is written slowly, line by line, day by day. Not only in dramatic moments, but in the ordinary places where almost no one notices whether you are becoming true. Think of the person at the same table again. The decision is there, yes, but so are years of hidden formation. Every time they told the truth when exaggeration would have protected their image. Every time they received correction without defending themselves to death. Every time they opened scripture not to collect a feeling, but to be shaped. Every time they chose patience when speed would have made them feel powerful. Those moments wrote something. The heart has a tablet, whether we admit it or not. Some people have fear written there in deep letters. They do not choose from wisdom. They choose from old injury. Some have approval written there, so every path is judged by who will clap or withdraw. Some have control written there, so peace is impossible unless every outcome can be managed. Some have comfort written there, so any costly obedience feels suspicious. And some, by the slow mercy of God, begin to have steadfast love and faithfulness written there, not perfectly, but truly. This is where Proverbs 3 becomes more than guidance for a hard choice. It becomes a picture of inner formation. Before God straightens paths, He writes truth in the inner life of the person walking them. I used to think the biggest issue in uncertainty was finding the correct external road. Should I stay or leave? Speak or wait? Begin or step back? Say yes or say no? Those questions matter. But sometimes the deeper work is happening underneath them. God is asking, what kind of person are you becoming while you seek the answer? Because two people can take the same step with different hearts. One says no from obedience, another says no from fear. One waits from trust, another waits from avoidance. One moves forward in faith, another moves forward because they cannot bear the shame of stillness. The action may look similar from the outside. The heart tells a different story. That is why the writing on the heart matters. If the heart has not been trained in truth, an unclear path becomes a room where every loud emotion grabs the pen. Anxiety writes, "You must fix this now." Pride writes, "You cannot look weak." Desire writes, "This will finally make you feel chosen." Exhaustion writes, "Just pick whatever makes the pressure stop." Then we call the handwriting wisdom because it came from inside us. But not every inner voice is wisdom. Proverbs 3 is fatherly enough to warn us before the crisis. Keep the teaching. Bind mercy and truth close. Write them where panic cannot erase them quickly. Let the Word of God become so familiar to your inner life that when the road turns, you are not forced to invent faith from scratch. This is not about becoming emotionally unshaken. The heart may still tremble, but a trembling heart can still hold what has been written into it. You may not know the whole path, but you can know what kind of step belongs to God. A truthful step, a humble step, a clean step, a step that does not require you to betray your conscience in order to get relief. And once the heart begins to carry that kind of writing, Proverbs 3 gives another warning. The danger is not only that we may lack wisdom, sometimes the danger is that we may become too impressed with our own. Number 3. The eye that thinks it sees everything. Be not wise in your own eyes. That sentence is sharper than it sounds. It does not say, do not be wise. It says, do not become wise in your own eyes. Do not let your own perspective become so convincing that you stop bringing it under the fear of the Lord. Do not confuse the strength of your interpretation with the fullness of reality. An unclear path humbles the eyes. You can see some things. You can see the facts in front of you. You can see the tone of the conversation, the numbers on the page, the open door, the closed door, the person's silence, the opportunity's risk, the ache in your own chest. But you cannot see everything. You cannot see what God is preventing. You cannot see what He is preparing. You cannot see the fruit of one small obedience 10 years from now. You cannot see what would happen to your heart if you received the thing too early, too quickly, or without surrender. That is why being wise in your own eyes is so dangerous. It makes a small field of vision feel like the whole landscape. It lets one angle become the judge of God's faithfulness. The body often knows when we have crossed into this. The shoulders rise, the jaw tightens. The mind begins rehearsing arguments instead of praying. We stop asking God for wisdom and start presenting Him with evidence for why our version must be right. We do not say, Lord, lead me. We say it with our mouths, but underneath we mean, Lord, confirm the interpretation I have already made. I have done that. I have asked for guidance while quietly defending the answer I preferred. I have wanted God's peace without giving Him permission to contradict me. I have opened my Bible hoping for comfort, but not correction. And that is a lonely way to seek God, because part of you is praying while another part is guarding the throne. Proverbs 3 links this warning with another phrase, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Notice how physical the promise becomes. Flesh, bones. The chapter is not treating trust as an abstract religious mood. It knows that self-reliance enters the body. Control can live in the stomach. Fear can live in the throat. Pride can keep the chest tight. A person can look calm, sound spiritual, and still be carrying the hidden exhaustion of trying to be wiser than their actual sight allows. There is a kind of tiredness that comes from sin, and there is a kind of tiredness that comes from trying to be sovereign. Both need mercy. When Proverbs says turning from evil brings refreshment to the bones, it is not promising that every hard road becomes easy. It is showing that the fear of the Lord restores something deep. You no longer have to hold the universe together with your interpretation. You no longer have to protect your pride by pretending you see more than you see. You no longer have to make every decision prove that you were right all along. You can become small again. Small before God is not unsafe. It is one of the safest places a human being can stand. The unclear path may be frightening, but the person who fears the Lord does not have to fear not being God. That sounds simple until the moment you are asked to live it. You may still gather counsel. You may still plan carefully. You may still admit that you are afraid. But the center shifts. Your own eyes are no longer treated as the highest court. This is where courage becomes possible, not because you finally see everything, because you no longer need to. And once your eyes are humbled, Proverbs 3 turns toward another area most of us would rather keep separate from trust. The way we handle what is in our hands. Number 4. Trust is proven by what your hands release. Proverbs 3 does something surprising after speaking about trust. It talks about first fruits. Honor the Lord with your wealth, and with the first fruits of all your produce. That may seem like a different subject at first, but it belongs directly to the courage of an unclear path. Because trust is never only a thought in the mind, eventually it reaches the hands. What do you release before the whole harvest is visible? What do you give to God before you know how much will be left? What do you refuse to grasp, hoard, manipulate, or protect, as if your survival depends on your grip? First fruits were not leftovers. They came from the beginning of the harvest, when the farmer still had to trust that more would follow. The first basket carried risk. It was grain with a question mark attached to it. It said, "Lord, before I secure myself with what I can count, I acknowledge that everything I have depends on you." That is not merely generosity. That is embodied trust. And the unclear path always asks for some kind of first fruits. Maybe not only money, sometimes the first fruit is honesty before you know how someone will respond. Sometimes it is obedience before your emotions have caught up. Sometimes it is a boundary before you know whether people will understand. Sometimes it is closing a door that feeds your ego before another door has opened. Sometimes it is giving God the first word in the morning before your fears have filled the room with noise. This is where many of us discover whether we trust God or only admire the idea of trusting Him. At the table, the decision is still there. But now the question has moved into the hands. The phone can be picked up or set down. The signature can be made or delayed. The message can be sent truthfully or edited until it hides the conviction. The money can be clutched or surrendered. The apology can be spoken or buried under pride. Trust becomes visible in small movements. I have wanted trust to stay spiritual enough that it would not cost me anything practical. I wanted to say, "Lord, I trust you," while still keeping full control of the thing that proved I did not. But Proverbs does not let trust remain a framed verse. It brings trust down into barns, baskets, hands, and first portions. The heart leans, the eyes humble themselves, the hands release. That is a whole life learning to trust. This also explains why unclear paths feel so uncomfortable. They expose what we are afraid to release. If you need everyone's approval before obeying, approval has become a first fruit you keep for yourself. If you need every detail before moving, certainty has become the grain you will not put in God's hands. If you need the outcome to protect your image, reputation has become the harvest you are trying to secure without surrender. Proverbs 3 is not asking you to be irresponsible. A farmer who gives first fruits still works the field. He still rises early, watches the weather, repairs tools, and gathers the crop. Trust does not cancel responsibility. It cleans it. It removes the panic from the work. It removes the illusion that your grip is what makes the harvest possible. It teaches your hands to act faithfully without pretending they are the source of provision. Maybe the courageous step in front of you is not dramatic. Maybe it is simply to stop clutching the one thing God has been asking you to place before Him, the explanation you keep demanding, the relationship you keep using to feel secure, the plan you keep rewriting because surrender feels too exposed, the version of the future you keep protecting because you are afraid that without it you will not know who you are. Put the first basket down, not because the road is clear, because God is worthy before the road is clear. And after Proverbs speaks to the heart, the eyes, and the hands, it gives one of the tenderest pictures in the chapter. The path may still be uncertain, but the person who walks with God is not condemned to live like a hunted soul. Number 5. The unclear path can still hold quiet sleep. Proverbs 3 does not promise a life with no danger. It says something more intimate. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. That line matters because the hardest part of an unclear path often arrives after the day is over. During the day, you can stay busy, you can answer messages, make lists, do the next task, sound steady, keep your face arranged. But at night, when the house quiets and the room stops asking for performance, the unanswered future sits beside the bed. You remember the decision. You replay the conversation. You wonder whether you missed God, whether you are falling behind, whether someone will misunderstand you, whether the door will close, whether the cost will be too high. The mind tries to walk the road while the body is lying still. This is where Proverbs 3 becomes unexpectedly compassionate. It does not only speak to the brave moment of obedience, it speaks to the vulnerable moment when your head touches the pillow and control has nothing left to do. Sweet sleep is not the sleep of a person who has solved everything. It is the sleep of a person who has stopped pretending they can be God overnight. There is a deep courage in that, to lie down before the answer comes, to let the day end without forcing one more analysis, to close the notebook without treating rest as negligence, to place the unresolved thing before the Lord and admit, I cannot watch this all night and still call it trust. I have struggled there. I have taken uncertainty to bed like a second body. I have let possible futures stand around the room until sleep became a negotiation. And many times, the issue was not that I had more wisdom to find at midnight. It was that I did not want to surrender the illusion that worry was helping. Worry can feel responsible. It is not. It is often the soul leaning on its own understanding in the dark. Proverbs 3:24 is not permission to ignore real problems. It is an invitation to remember that your Father remains awake when you cannot. The Lord does not need your anxiety in order to govern the future. He is not waiting for you to rehearse every outcome before He can act wisely. He is not strengthened by your sleeplessness. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to need rest before the path is explained. This is not weakness. It is worship in a quiet form. Sleep can become a confession. God is God while I am unconscious. God is faithful while I am not managing. God is near while I am not watching the road. And then morning comes, not always with a full answer. Sometimes only with enough mercy to stand, wash your face, open the curtains, and take the next honest step. But the person who has slept under God's care walks differently. Not because everything is easy, but because the soul has practiced letting go. That is the hidden arc of Proverbs 3. It does not simply tell you to trust at the crossroads. It teaches you to become the kind of person whose heart is written with truth, whose eyes are humble, whose hands can release, whose bones are not exhausted by pretending to be sovereign, and whose sleep is not owned by fear. The path may still be unclear, but the person walking it is being made whole. And now the final question is not whether you can see far enough. It is whether you will let God carry the weight you were never meant to lean on. Conclusion: teach my heart where to lean. Maybe nothing outside you changes the moment this video ends. The email may still need an answer. The conversation may still be waiting. The road may still look unfinished. But something can change in the quiet place where fear has been asking for your full weight. You can stop leaning there. You can close the notebook after you have been honest. You can set the phone down without calling panic wisdom. You can take the next clean step without demanding that God show you the next 10. You can give Him the first basket, not because the barns are already full, but because your life belongs to Him before the harvest explains itself. And tonight, when the room gets quiet, you can let your body tell the truth your soul is learning. I am not the keeper of tomorrow. I am a child under the care of a faithful Father. That does not make the unclear path painless. It makes it holy ground, because Proverbs 3 was never only about getting the right direction. It was about becoming the kind of person who no longer needs certainty to feel held by God. A person whose heart has another place to lean. A person who can walk, release, rest, and obey without turning understanding into an idol. So before you rush back into the question, pause. Feel the weight you have been carrying in your shoulders, your hands, your chest. Name the thing you have leaned on too heavily. Then give that weight back to God. Write this in the comments as a quiet marker of surrender. Lord, teach my heart where to lean, not where to pretend, not where to panic, where to lean.